for Research, Economic Advancement, Technology, Engineering, Science Corporation, doing business as New York Creates. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Bhagat Samakia, who has been appointed by unanimous consent of the members of New York Creates, the Research Foundation of the State University of New York, and the SUNY Polytechnic Foundation, Inc., and the consent of Empire State Development as a director and chair of New York Creates. I'm very pleased to have Bhagat here with us today. Bhagat shares somewhat of a background with me at some corporation called IBM. Although we were in the same corporation, I don't think we ever knew each other. But recently, in the past few years, certainly our paths have crossed a lot more. And Bhagat is now the distinguished professor, SUNY professor, and VP of research at the University of Binghamton, and also the director of what's called the Small Scale Systems Integration and Packaging Center. Bhagat, I think everybody knows, also served as interim president here at SUNY Poly. Bhagat's a technologist and obviously academic ties with expertise in the areas of electronic packaging and materials and the overall technology. So Bhagat brings truly an excellent understanding of nanotechnology, semiconductors, and their extreme importance to society overall. And he knows SUNY, and he knows SUNY Poly well, and New York State. So I'm pleased to welcome Bhagat as chairman of New York Creates.
Thank you, Doug. I think I actually reported to you at one point in IBM through many layers of management. So I'd like to start by taking this opportunity to welcome and introduce the directors of NY Creates. They are Michael Abbott, former university auditor for the State University of New York, Alicia Barton, who could not be here today. She is president and CEO of New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Can the people on the phone hear me well?
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you hear me?
We have an echo, so maybe when you're not addressing us, maybe if everybody can mute their phones, that would be terrific. Christine Chung, who's Assistant Clinical Professor of Law and Director of the Securities Arbitration Clinic at Albany Law School. Michael Frame, Chief Operating Officer and Chief of Staff of SUNY Polytechnic Institute. Franklin Hecht, former Chief Financial Officer of the New York State Office of General Services. Meng Li Sao, she's on the phone, former General Electric Executive Chief Consulting Engineer of Reliability and Executive Chief Engineer of Science and Technology. And I should mention that Meng Ling and I served together on the Research Foundation board for a number of years. Brad Johnson, who's with us on video. By phone. He's the founder and president of Resource Mobilization Advisors. Joanne McDonald, Westchester County Director of Operations and former Commissioner of the New York State Department of Transportation. Kristen Proud, former Commissioner of the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. And Kenneth Tompkins, former Empire State Development Regional Director for the Mohawk Valley. I would also like to recognize the following attendees. Kevin Eunice, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Empire State Development. He's the designee of the Chief Executive Officer of Empire State Development. And I've had the pleasure of working with Kevin for the last couple of years, 2 years ago. And Dr. Todd Larson, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor of the State University of New York, who's the designee of the Chancellor of the State University of New York. Also here today are the proposed officers of New York Creates, including Dr. Douglas Gross, Patricia Arpiero Craig, Paul Kelly, Scott Bateman, Timothy Taylor, and Patricia Buckland. At this point, I'd like to ask the directors if any of them has any potential conflict of interest with respect to the items on today's agenda. If so, please make an appropriate disclosure on the record and recuse yourself from any discussions or vote related regarding that item that you're conflicted with. Not seeing any conflicts, we can continue. So we'll move to the resolution section of the meeting, and the first resolution is New York Creates Organizational Matters. What I would like to do is give you some background initially, and I'll ask Doug to add to the background. On May 5th, 2018, the State of New York, State University of New York, and Empire State Development, ESD, announced the creation of the New York Center for Research, Economic Advancement, Technology, Engineering, and Science Corporation, which is New York Creates, to serve as a resource for public-private academic research within New York State and SUNY, to create and lead industry-connected research, economic development, and commercialization that attracts investment and creates high-tech jobs. And Doug, would you like to add to the background?
Sure. So New York Creates will assume control of two existing affiliate corporations. It's Fuller Road Management Corporation and Fort Schuyler Management Corporation. And New York Creates will become the sole member of FRMC and FMSC by replacing their existing members, the RF Foundation and SUNY College. In addition, each director of New York Creates shall be deemed to have been appointed the director of FRMC and FSMC by virtue of being a director of New York Creates. Further, the officers of New York Creates will serve ex officio as officers of FRMC and FSMC in the same office that such individuals hold with New York Creates, and each director of New York Creates serving on a committee of New York Creates shall be deemed to have been appointed as a member of the corresponding committee of FRMC and FSMC. Lastly, all ex officio non-voting advisory representatives to New York Creates Board shall be deemed to be ex officio non-voting advisory representatives to the boards of FRMC and FSMC. New York Creates management team will manage all the projects under FRMC and FSMC economic development portfolio, as well as the RF-sponsored industrial programs through coordination with the Research Foundation in SUNY. Consistent with the SUNY Chancellor's May 5th, 2018 statement, New York Creates will also connect with SUNY Polytechnic Institute and other SUNY institutions to support academic and industry-related programs, educational opportunities, and provide the ability to expose students to cutting-edge research opportunities and internships. A single management team across New York Creates enterprise will streamline the management and improve the effectiveness of the current FRMC and FSMC and RF economic development portfolios.
Thank you. So before reading the proposal, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the proposal.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. I should also mention that the resolution will also authorize the binding of the directors and officers insurance policy for New York Creates. At present, FRMC and FSMC each have a directors and officers insurance policy of $15 million. The new policy will have a $30 million aggregate limit for New York Creates, FRMC and FSMC. So the proposal is three parts. The first part is to organize New York Creates by approving and accepting the Certificate of Incorporation of New York Creates as filed with the Department of State on May 8, 2018, approving and accepting the New York Creates bylaws as adopted by the initial directors, appointing officers of New York Creates, establishing audit and finance committees, and adopting various governance, policies, and guidelines. So that was the first bullet. The second item is to assume control of FRMC and FSMC by accepting sole membership in FRMC and FSMC, approving certificates of amendments of approving certificates of amendments of the certificate of incorporations of FRMC and FSMC for New York Creates to be the sole member, approving amended and restated bylaws of FRMC and FSMC to allow individuals serving as NY Creates directors, officers, advisory representatives, and committee members to serve ex officio as the directors, officers, advisory representatives, and committee members of FRMC and FSMC. And the third and final item of the proposal is to approve binding of directors and officers insurance policy. So specifically, the action requested is to adopt resolution number 1 to organize NY Creates, assume control of FRMC and FSMC, bind a directors and officers insurance policy, and authorize the president, the chief financial officer, and the treasurer, each of them without the other, to execute, acknowledge, and deliver any documents as such officer may deem necessary or appropriate to effectuate the purposes and intents of the foregoing resolution. At this point, we can open it for discussion. Any questions or comments? So, barring none, I would like to ask for a vote. So let's start with the ayes.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? So the ayes have it. Did we need to take a count?
No.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to move to new business. Can move on to public comments. Any questions or comments from the public? And if there are none, then we can talk about scheduling the next meeting. Do we have a proposed date?
To be determined.
Okay. So we will announce that after serving. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I would like to call for an adjournment of the meeting.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.